But if I'm going to put myself in a space to be around people for that much of my time,
Right.
and I broke it down for the students for one period, one whole day, every class I taught this. And I was like, all right, look, I go home every day, typically about 5 o'clock, 5:30, and I'm usually in bed by a certain time. And then I'm asleep until another time where I get up and come back here. And the majority of my waking hours are spent here with you guys, right? So if I wasn't fulfilled in that, I'd be gone.
Yeah.
Because life is too short.
Yeah,
for me to
absolutely.
spend 3/4 of my waking hours somewhere I don't feel fulfilled, right? And my heart, but yet you have to discipline your mind to figure out. So I talked to them. I said, okay, so if you got a job somewhere, pick the place, right? Burger King, McDonald's, whatever, right? I'd ask them, I said, how much you make there? And they'd say, pick a number. And I'd, $15 an hour, $16 an hour, whatever it is. I'd say, okay, do you like the job? Nah, just give me the money. I said, okay, so that's how much your time is worth. Your time is worth $16 an hour. Oh, but Master Chief, that's where all the place I can get a job. Look, I'm not dogging it out.
Right.
I'm just telling you, you need to find more reasons to work there than just for the check.
Yeah.
Because that check ain't worth it.
So,
right?
So let me challenge that real quick.
Let's do it.
I agree 100%, 110% if that existed. So, but here's the challenge. And my wife often says this to me because sometimes I get into this because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a consultant and financial advisor to entrepreneurs. I'm surrounded constantly by a very small demographic, maybe 10 or 15 or 20% of the population that is actually entrepreneurial successful, not hobbyists, but actually successful at it. And she has to sometimes remind me that, because a lot of the things like what you and I are talking about make sense to us, but how many people, 80%, I don't know, I'm making up that number, but 80% of the world, maybe that all they can handle is that job. And she's like, well, Chris, you just assume that everybody can think like you and wake up and say, there's a problem, let's come up with a creative way to solve it. No, they wake up saying, I got to pay a bill and that boss is going to pay me if I show up. I better not be late. And that's all the capacity they have to think. And she has to remind me that. And she was like, there's a reason you're good at what you're doing, because most people aren't. And you, if everybody was, you wouldn't be able to wipe the floor with everybody because they'd all be on an equal playing field. And so she said, count your blessings that God gave you those gifts and remind yourself that most don't. And so I always have to remind myself that.
Well, and I would say to that point, the whole point of my lesson is I got this young person who's just entering the job market, right? Typically they're an 11th grader, 12th grader.